Hey guys, here with another video per a request from a backer. Kind of here to talk about some of the woods and give some comparison on the different color schemes and show some variation and how it kind of all ties together. In particular, I'll be showcasing it with each of the woods and everything I've got, including raw lumber, as well as obviously against my black walnut table and game deck here. So I'm just going to dive right in. First and foremost, let me start off by saying the Espresso Maple and the Tavern Elm, I'm really not going to be addressing in this video much other than to say here they are in relation to the black walnut table. The reality is they're stained, so there's going to be variation of a multitude out there. I've seen several people with the Espresso Maple that have varied really dark, almost to a jet black. This is on the lighter end of the spectrum from what I've seen in comparison to other people. So just keep in mind, obviously, even with stains, depending on how thick the coating is, can depend on kind of the final coloring and how much grain is visible. For me, you can see quite a bit of grain still, but it's definitely in that espresso mix. The Tavern Elm, with Elm, you get a lot of variation in grain. And if I kind of bring it in closer, I'll even try and kick it on an angle here and see if I can capture some of the variation in like the porous nature of the wood. It's not the smoothest, but it's definitely a nice wood. Got a lot of character to it, but that is kind of the nature of more of an open grain versus this, which is a closed grain, meaning it's very smooth. You're not going to see anything in there. We'll talk more about that as I kind of showcase. Going down the line from the most expensive, you got the Purple Heart. So you can see on the Purple Heart, this is a very vibrant color. I took this out. This is a little bit older, not super old, probably about a year and a half, and it came less vibrant already. But you can kind of compare that to all these other Purple Hearts. And yes, this is Purple Heart. This is definitely an older piece. It's probably 10 plus years old. So this is where the color is eventually going to go. If you're not familiar with Purple Heart, it starts kind of on the lighter end in the brownish sector, and then it works its way to this more vibrant, and then it goes back to probably more in the brown. You can find a lot of spectrum-based pictographs and stuff like that out there that can kind of help you to show this, but this kind of just gives you an idea. Again, you can see some of the different hues and the variations of Purple Heart. A lot of this is newer stuff though, newer product, and that's why it's very vibrant. A lot of people, I would assume that when they go to buy it, want to find more in this color scheme, and so people sell it that way. Just in comparison, for those that aren't familiar, this is Zero Coat, so don't look at this edging on either end for comparison of color or think that that's anything else. Next up, we got Wenge. Again, this is a raw piece that I've cut off from making things, and you can kind of see if I hold it at this angle, that open grain that we were talking about. You can see how it's not the smoothest. Now, that doesn't mean it feels pitted or anything like that when you're touching it. It's still very smooth, but it is definitely something to note that it's not going to be as smooth, and it is going to have variation in kind of that final finish. So you can see with this angle some of that unevenness that I'm referring to, that open grain. Now, kind of going over here in comparison, so this has a little bit more of that chocolatey color to it, versus this is darker and almost black. And so you can kind of see that color variation again that you're going to find with even something like Wenge, where it's you know, a solid wood. It's not like an Espresso Maple, but it definitely has variation from really dark to a lot lighter. And there is even lighter than this out there, but for the purposes of the table, I wouldn't expect to see that. Going on to Padouk, you have, again, the open grain, and I'll try and capture that again. So you can see my pieces, how many little markings, kind of, they look like almost etchings in the wood, and that is normal. This is a dice tower that I've got, and you can see for consistency purposes how like Cheeto-y color, as many people like to talk about, this color is. And then again, this is a pretty fresh cut of raw Padouk. It doesn't have any finish or anything on it, just like the other Wenge one that I had back here, by the way, and the ones for Purple Heart. These are unfinished, so you're going to see a slight variation between that without having anything on there. And then this is an old piece of Padouk. We're talking probably, again, 10 plus years old. So you can see it's definitely getting more in the brown realm. And I'll kind of rotate it just to show you some variation of that. So you can see it's definitely lost its luster, that bright orange color that people know Padouk for. And so this definitely tames down over time. So if you don't love this, but you like more of the dark browns, you could definitely see where this goes. Next up, we've got the black walnut. Okay, and again, this one is considered a closed grain, so it's going to be a little bit smoother to the touch. This is a piece of raw black walnut, and I made sure to grab one that had a little sapwood to show you how light sapwood can go. I mean, even this in here has a little bit of a lighter streak to it, but it's not true sap. If I were to bring this over actually to the edge of my table, you can see in comparison, this has just a little bit of sapwood thrown in on my shield apron, which I actually love. Even though this is considered a black walnut table, I love that this has a little bit of character here. Or even as I go over to my leg here, you can kind of, again, see how light black walnut can get with those little streaks. So a lot of variation in black walnut. That's one of the things people love about it, is the color variation and tones that it can give. And then next up we have cherry. I'll be honest, I don't have anything lying around in cherry, which is kind of shocking for how popular a wood it is. The biggest thing to note is that it can darken over time quite a bit if you put it in the sun. Some people intentionally will do this to get that exposure, and so you get that very golden color over time. And it really stands out next to the maple right here. So next up we've got maple, and I do have a raw piece of lumber for that again as well. In comparison, this is about a 1-year-old piece that has been sitting in the sun. And again, the one that I got with my modular game table, and you can see there really isn't much of a color variation. That's kind of one of the things about maple, that it really, in my experience, doesn't change that much. So the color you get is the color you get. It kind of goes from almost a white to just like a little bit lighter. And again, you can see the raw to the finished, to about a 1-year-old finished piece. Now, before I go, I wanted to quickly show, just in comparison, how some other woods compare with the black walnut. For those that have collections or are looking to finish their rooms, this is all considered rosewood. And people talk about how the prophecy is made out of rosewood, and they wish that the table was made out of rosewood. And I just want to show like the amount of color variation. This all right here is from a set that I got that is for the dice tower, the P tray, and the dice holder. And you can see how much variation in color there really is, and the grain, how wild it can kind of get. And again, here's another raw piece of lumber that's unfinished, and you can kind of see how it really compares, that crazy grain that really does make rosewood such a pretty thing. I personally love more of these darker colors rather than the lighter, streaky nature of it, but you know, everyone has their own thing. And then finally, the last thing I thought I'd show off was these two pieces, which show a Peruvian walnut as well as white oak. And again, I'll just turn that sideways and you can kind of see how that color compares with the black walnut table kind of in the background. And I'm trying to move around intentionally to give you some different angles in case the light hits it differently. The Peruvian black walnut, I think, is a really nice chocolatey, beautiful color. Definitely very much in that Wenge area. You could probably pair these two. I'll kind of show that pretty nicely. And they're not an exact match, but they look really nice, dark colors kind of together. So hopefully this helps you in terms of picking out a wood. If you're looking for anything else in particular, don't hesitate to put something in comments, and I can always get you the information in the Modular Game Table Discord or the Wyrmwood Discord, or I'm always happy to create another video if it warrants it. So take care.